I deserve to be punished for it. The implication of these words was that Ruby said she didn't do it because she fundamentally didn't think she was wrong, so she wouldn't admit it. Aaron, seeing her shivering, decided to accompany her inside to change clothes. But the glance she cast back at Ruby as she left contained disappointment and confusion. A familiar scene played out again, no matter how hard Ruby tried to fit in with them. Whenever there was a conflict between her and Yuri, everyone would unwaveringly stand on Yuri's side. A sense of helplessness deeply surrounded her. This time, would she be abandoned just like last time? Although she kept comforting herself that she should be used to it by now, she couldn't stop her tears. Faced with the maid's concerned greeting, she buried her face in the maid's arms and cried loudly. On the other side, this guy was clearly unaware of what had happened at home. He was now focused on how to achieve victory in the upcoming sword-fighting competition. The final part of the sword-fighting competition was slaying magical beasts. Given Ruby's special connection with magical beasts, there was no guarantee how they might react upon seeing her. They wanted to see her throw a tantrum, see her angry, see her argue with Iskai, but her character was supposed to be naive and sweet, so how could she do that? But due to the arrival of the cardinal in red robes, Ruby had to attend, so he must win so that if the magical beasts act up, he can kill them with one strike. But what he didn't know was that his beloved wife, whom he constantly thought about, had been bullied to the point of despair. Perhaps because she was mentally prepared at this moment, Ruby surprisingly felt no hatred towards Yuri. After all, here, she had no right to be compared with Yuri. In the original story, Eurelia was the protagonist. She knew this better than anyone. She shouldn't have harbored even the slightest illusion about fitting in here. The day's turmoil triggered Ruby's anorexia again, and during the uncertain discomfort, she walked into the garden. Looking at the rippling water of the lake, she unconsciously stopped. Not long ago, she had thought about going boating here with Aaron. After this incident, she must regret getting close to me. She thought this time she had met someone she could open up to. How presumptuous. The memories of interactions with her husband flashed before her eyes. A feeling of reluctance filled her entire chest. If she sincerely begged her husband, would he show her leniency? As she was pondering, the head maid's voice came from behind. Verbally, she asked if Madame had eaten, but her tone still carried that superior attitude. Then she abruptly changed the subject and started talking about Ruby's anorexia. Although Aaron told her about this, just to make her more sympathetic towards Ruby, it was obvious that she, who had been serving by the Grand Duke's side for so long, had already noticed and deeply despised it. Seeing her husband's impatient face, she pretended not to notice. I won't bother you anymore in the future. She believed that Ruby's existence, like the deceased wife, would only bring harm to Aaron and this guy again. Her affection for Aaron had surpassed her regret and sorrow over the Grand Duke's death. So for Ruby, whom she had no feelings for, she only wanted to drive her away. You not only have the same strange habits as the previous wife, but you're also just as troublesome as her. I can't help but wonder if the mistress of this house is under some curse. She wanted to drive Ruby away, but she should consider her own position. Ruby stood up and calmly said, "No, I will never leave this place even if I die." Talk about first love, talk about everyone having their suitable place. Why should my life be dictated by them? I came here to survive, but these people want to tear me apart. Ruby, unable to endure anymore, raised her hand and slapped the head maid hard across the face. Ruby finally stood up for herself. This slap stunned the head maid. She held her face, looking at Ruby in disbelief. "Isn't this what you wanted?" Ruby asked. The old woman suddenly realized, "So you've been pretending all along. You've finally shown your true colors." She shouted that she would report this to Aaron, but Ruby had already reached her limit. "From now on, I'll just hide and watch you." Ruby wanted to create a devoted follower image, but unexpectedly there was a gap in their understanding. She was supposed to be a villainess. She was a Carnal's daughter, she had the right to be arrogant, and you're just a head maid, you should be grateful I didn't cut out your tongue. The head maid's arrogance immediately deflated. Wanting to argue but having nothing to say, she could only grit her teeth and turn to flee. As soon as she left, Ruby collapsed. Everything should be over now, right? Love, friendship, it was all just her own delusion. Meanwhile, Aaron had been replaying the afternoon's events in her mind. Although she never doubted her best friend, she also believed that Ruby wouldn't do such a thing. Ruby's lonely and helpless figure kept lingering in her mind. She couldn't help but sigh, so when her brother returned and asked how the afternoon tea party went, she told him everything without hesitation. As soon as this guy heard, he rushed to Ruby's room, but he only saw the maid cleaning up. He panicked instantly. Following the maid's directions, he went to the garden. but still there was no sign of his wife. He was so afraid that she had left again without a word, afraid that he thought he had entered her heart but had unknowingly hurt her again. He heard the sound of splashing water. Ruby disgustingly spat out the food she had eaten. The man who had been unresponsive to her words suddenly grabbed her shoulders forcefully. "What do you mean by hiding?" Turning his head, he was delighted to find her sitting by the lake. His anxious heart finally calmed down. He quietly walked over. "What are you doing here?" Ruby, lost in her thoughts, was startled. "Hi, you're back. Were you playing hide and seek?" "Yes, how did you find me so quickly? Should I get a reward for finding you?" This guy's smooth talk made Ruby hesitate for half a second. "How about I kiss you?" This guy's face showed a gentle smile. He leaned in, bringing his face close. "Well, hurry up then." Although this tenderness might be fleeting, Ruby still wanted to cherish this brief moment of beauty. Iskai probably hadn't heard about what happened, right? Or maybe he was testing her. Whichever the answer was, this would probably be their last kiss. Thinking of this, her tears started falling uncontrollably. "You've heard, haven't you? I know you won't believe anything I say, but whether it was then or now, I really didn't do anything." She really wasn't lying. He must be very disappointed in her now. Ruby lowered her head. She didn't have the courage to see Iskai's disappointed or accusatory gaze. Even when this guy asked her to look up at him, she refused, until the man said, "You don't even want to look at me now." Only then did she slightly raise her head, then she shook her head vigorously. How could she not want to see him? "Do you want to die?" Ruby shook her head frantically and she triggered some death flag. Why was this guy's reaction so intense? But she always caused him trouble. She was so afraid he would say something about sending her back again. Before, he said he hated her, was annoyed by her. She had tried her best not to do things that would displease him. This guy was at a loss for words. He hurriedly explained, "It's not like that. At that time, I was only thinking about your safety. I thought sending you back to Rome was the best choice. I was afraid that the more I held on, the more reluctant you would be to leave this place. That's why I said those words against my true feelings. But I know who you really care about in your heart, so you don't need to worry about me. Go find Miss Aurelia." Iskai's heart sank. It seemed his wife had really misunderstood. He grabbed her hand. "It's not like that." He explained to her that the reason he pushed her away at that time was because he was worried that the blood from the magic stone would splash onto her. He was afraid she would be in danger, so he reacted instinctively. The person he truly cared about in his heart had always been only her. "I'm sorry, it's my fault. No matter what the reason, I shouldn't have treated you like that." All misunderstandings were cleared up at this moment. Ruby's tense nerves completely relaxed at this moment. She pounded on her husband's chest, venting her grievances. "I didn't do it. I really didn't do anything. What does everyone always target me?" At this moment, she finally felt her husband's sincere heart. This guy felt both heartbroken and guilty. Feeling upset, tears were about to fall again. The blonde beside him hurriedly explained that life in the north was very dangerous. He could only hold her tightly, letting her discover his true feelings. When Ruby calmed down, the young couple rarely sat down to talk. This warm atmosphere, however, reminded Ruby of the traveler's words. Iskai was just infatuated with his first love, losing his rationality. Our fate is as fragile as flower petals. Too much trust won't lead to good results. She hesitated whether to tell her husband about these thoughts, but she wasn't confident he would believe her. In the end, she chose not to speak, but then Iskai candidly told her about the fighting festival. Worried that she would be upset seeing magical creatures die, he could only do his best to end the competition quickly. Moreover, he wanted to give her the highest honor of the competition, the Flower of Glory. This way, no one would dare look down on her again. Only at this moment did Ruby finally understand why her husband was willing to participate in the competition despite the dangers. She also finally understood why he had always prevented her from contacting magical creatures. It turned out everything was for her, so what was there not to trust? Although she hated herself for being a tattletale, she still selfishly wanted to confirm his true feelings. She told him about you really as warning. The headmaid wanted to drive her away and how she slapped the headmaid. Unexpectedly, before she could finish, this guy interrupted her. So as holy knights, in order to track the magical aura of monsters, they had to constantly elevate their sword energy and holy power to the peak. Seeing Ruby's anxiety and unease, Iskai regretfully covered his forehead. He held her hand, telling her to relax. "Speak slowly, don't mind anything else besides you, because you are the most important." In the past, she was always afraid of angering others, so she was used to jumping to conclusions when explaining things, accustomed to attributing mistakes to herself. After hesitating for a long time, she made a wish to her husband. Please don't get tired of me in the future. This guy felt a deep sense of helplessness. What kind of wish is that? But everyone says your love for me is just a fleeting moment. Soon, you'll grow tired of me. Although she didn't want to be influenced by them, they were after all her closest people, so she couldn't be certain of his feelings for her. The gentleman stood up and knelt before her. If I make those gossipers shut up forever, will you believe me then? Ruby panicked. She never thought he would go this far, causing family turmoil for her sake. But his guy thought it didn't matter. It was only right for a husband to defend his wife's honor. As long as it made her feel better, what did those people matter? He held his wife's cold hands. So what do I need to do for you to stop hiding away and crying? In 2 lifetimes, she never dared to hope that the brilliant sunlight would shine on her. If ordinary people approached, they could be accidentally injured. She, this cursed soul, couldn't escape darkness no matter where she went. But even so, she still resisted death because she wanted to live to the end in this world that always denied her value, to prove her worth of existence. It was he who ignited the light of hope in her heart. Large tears fell onto Iska's hands, burning his heart like flames. Hearing his wife say it was her own problem, hearing her say she didn't deserve such happiness, his heart ached as if being cut by a knife. Ruby kept saying thank you. Iska reached out to caress her cheek. What is there to thank for? I will always stand by your side, seeing her husband's passionate and loving gaze. She couldn't help but doubt if she really deserved to be loved like this. What if one day I make a big mistake? Will you still stand by my side then? In that case, I'll become your accomplice. After all, a united couple can overcome anything. What if I get spoiled by you like this? It's okay, you could be a little worse whether right or wrong. This kind of unconditional trust is truly heart-moving, so maybe magic will really happen to him. So that's how it was. Ruby lowered her head in embarrassment. The domineering head maid was finally driven away. This was the result of Erin's desperate efforts to bring her down. After all, as her wet nurse, she was like a mother to Erin. The childhood experiences were still vivid, her birth mother grabbing her by the neck, cursing angrily for her to die. Because of her love for her mother, she tried again and again to understand her, to forgive her over and over. But the results couldn't be changed just by her efforts. Every time her life was in danger, only the wet nurse would hurry to protect her in her arms. At that time, the wet nurse was her only salvation. So when her brother was about to cut her down with a sword, she unhesitatingly stood in front of her. But how could his sky forgive her? A mere servant daring to clamor about driving the mistress away. She even said the mistress was presumptuous to have expectations for her first love. She even accused Ruby and the former mistress of being cursed. When questioned by the master, she still tried to smear Ruby, saying she was only concerned about her and telling her to break bad habits. She was a born and raised Southerner. She really didn't know. At this moment, Erin stepped forward to break the awkward situation. You should have told me in advance if your schedule changed. As a result, Ruby actually slapped her. If it wasn't for their conversation being overheard clearly by the new gardener who presented the head maid's glasses as evidence. Even Erin would have been deceived by her, combined with the best friend's eagerness to explain earlier. The uncomfortable feeling in his heart finally found an answer. He almost thought arrogance and domineering were Ruby's true nature. When he first met Ruby, he felt a bit relieved. After all, if she hadn't married over, he would have had to marry into a foreign country. Although he felt a bit sorry for her, at the time he thought Ruby was just a temporary guest. After spending time together, he gradually opened his heart to her. But Ruby always seemed unable to truly enter his heart. His best friend had explained this water splashing incident to him, but was it really just about childhood matters, as she said? As childhood best friends who shared everything, she should trust her completely, but it was because she knew her so well that she found her behavior strange. Knowing what the head maid had done, she finally understood what Ruby had been afraid of all along. Yuli also playfully winked and complained, so many beauties are waiting for you at home. Don't you know how to be grateful? But his guy turned a deaf ear to their words. But in the end, she still couldn't let go of her feelings for the head maid. So she asked her brother to dismiss the servants first and revealed the long-hidden secret in her heart. As a brother, this guy felt very guilty. He wasn't unaware of his mother's mental illness. But at that time, he was receiving air education every day, too busy to even have time to see his sister. So when his sister was threatened by their mother and almost killed by her, he knew nothing about it and to protect their mother. Every time Erin saw him, even with wounds on her face, she would casually say it was from playing. If he had cared more about his sister than look back at her once more, would everything have been different? The thread dropped to the ground with a clang. In the end, this guy still let them leave. Angry, disappointed, and sad, various complex emotions filled Erin's heart. After Ruby's runaway incident, she tried to make the head maid change her view of Ruby to eliminate the gap between them. She even told her the same secret she shared with her mother. He still stared at Ruby with a gloomy face. He looked like he wanted to say something to Ruby, but just then the Emperor arrived. But the head maid not only acted hypocritically towards her, but also used this as a weapon to attack Ruby. Even now, she's still claiming it was for her own good, but how could that be considered good? If it was truly for her own good, no matter what, she wouldn't have said things to smear her deceased mother, despite the head maid kneeling before her, crying and begging for forgiveness. She still threw the packed suitcase in front of her, leave now, right now. The head maid was completely panicked. Perhaps more than the fear of death, what she found harder to let go of was her deep affection for Erin. She lunged forward, grabbing her hand, begging for another chance. But Erin violently shook her off. Her tear-stained face was full of determination. "There's no future, you'll never set foot in here again." After saying this, she walked straight out of the room. Tears rolled down her cheeks and fell to the ground, driving away the person closest to her. Her heart ached as if pierced by needles. With this guy's temper, he would definitely kill the head maid, but she couldn't bear to watch her be killed. Driving her away was already the most merciful punishment. Watching the head maid leave, she cried uncontrollably. At this moment, this guy came looking for her. Everyone had to bow to the Emperor together. He was regretful and self-blaming. Whether it was about his mother or sister, he knew so little about their affairs. "Can you tell me?" Erin only remembered that her mother had developed an illness where she would vomit after eating. Usually she ate very little, but that day, contrary to her usual behavior, she ate a lot. Out of concern for her mother, she thought to check on her. Unexpectedly, she saw her mother in a hurried state. She was discovered and was threatened by her mother that if she dared to tell anyone, she would kill her in front of everyone, until her mother passed away. Until they grew up, she never mentioned anything about her mother to anyone, but she didn't blame her. Every time she thought of her mother, those eyes hollow from torment, she only felt heartache and regret. This guy felt utterly powerless. He couldn't imagine how his young sister had gotten through those days. Did father know about these things? Who knows? I barely saw father's face back then, but she guessed he probably didn't know. Saying this, she glanced at her brother. Perhaps that's how it is between couples. If one is determined to hide something, the other won't know at all. Just like now, a bad premonition welled up in Iskai's heart. Everything was eerily similar to her previous life. Seeing Iskai's intense confrontation with the Emperor, she seemed to understand a bit. Her husband's bad temper wasn't just directed at her alone. That's right, Ruby's current state is just like mother's back then. His sister's words made Iskai want to hit himself on the head. He knew Ruby didn't like to eat, but he thought it was just simple digestive discomfort. It turns out that the faint scar on his wife's hand was a mark left from long-term induced vomiting. No wonder her body was always so thin, but he couldn't directly ask Ruby about this problem. He could only continue to pretend not to know. However, he couldn't let things continue like this anymore. When he was young, his father always told him that mother was just a bit unwell. And as the heir of the family, he couldn't be too close to mother now. When mother got better, he would be able to see her. But he waited and waited, only to find his mother hanging dead in front of him. From that day on, he always blamed his father. If it wasn't for him, he could have seen his mother one more time. With luck, maybe he could have prevented that tragedy. To avoid becoming someone like his father, he rejected all possibilities of marriage. Until this time when he agreed to an arranged marriage for his sister. However, just taking this step, his heart began to waver. On one hand, he feared repeating his father's mistakes. On the other, he couldn't help falling in love with her, thinking of his wife, shrinking her shoulders, and carefully observing others' reactions. He couldn't help but feel angry. Who exactly had hurt someone so fragile? Seeing the light gradually return to her eyes, he naively believed that she had moved past the shadows of her past. She couldn't help but feel a bit more comforted. Her beloved man got married, but the bride wasn't her. Or should he start? How long had she endured this pain alone? Won't say long time no see, you'll just smile foolishly to brush it off or keep looking to my left where you're right. After crying for a day and a night, she pretended nothing happened and attended the banquet in front of his wife. She wanted to show how close she was to the man. She even said the man wouldn't listen to her anymore. The sister-in-law couldn't help but retort that her brother had never listened to anyone, not even bothering to pretend. The woman, being exposed, quickly changed the topic and asked Ruby if she liked horseback riding. Ruby cheerfully replied that although she wasn't good at it, she still liked it. It might be a lie because in her previous life, she was forced to learn all the noble sports thoroughly. But none of them gave her any good memories. She thought it was just small talk, but some troublemaking onlookers said both ladies are excellent at chess. They were both taught by Iskai personally. Madam, why don't you let your husband teach you too? This topic seemed to suit the love rival's heart. That was all when we were young. The words seemed to hint to Ruby how close she was to her husband. Watching the two of them play off each other, Ruby understood everything. The damn world-weary self, adopted by high society, foster parents with their own lovers, a drug-addicted second brother, an outwardly gentle but inwardly perverted eldest brother, the only sister who could bring her warmth. They probably wanted to see her and Yuli directly confront each other, but she didn't care at all. After all, she was just a naive sweetie. She smiled foolishly and said, "Thank you for your concern, but I can't take up the time of such a busy person for such a small matter." This non-aggressive response instantly extinguished the women's desire for drama. The topic quickly shifted to the triennial sword fighting competition. At that time, Big Brother would definitely come in the name of the committee, seemingly to be a judge, but actually to check if he had betrayed. She really hated it. One husband was enough trouble. Feeling depressed, she inadvertently drank a couple more glasses. She wanted to go out for some fresh air, but unexpectedly bumped into a man in the corridor. The man introduced himself with a smile. It turned out this curly-haired man was Yule's brother, Roland. Roland apologized verbally, but his eyes were cold enough to make one's blood run cold. This palpable hostility almost suffocated Ruby. What's going on? She had never met him before, but since the other party didn't bring it up, she could only pretend not to know. Chose her birth family at the age of 21. Similar experiences made her in two lives with different identities, only able to survive by playing the role of a naive innocent. After chatting for a few sentences, the man said he couldn't believe he met her in person because the Pope's daughter was famous everywhere. And there was even a popular song recently singing about Madame Ning. Really, this gave her a little surprise. After all, she didn't have anything noteworthy. So Roland cleared his throat and started singing. The gist of the lyrics was, the Lark of Ramana couldn't find a suitable young man but fell for the brother with no blood relation. Ruby had already guessed the other party's ill intentions, so she listened without changing her expression. Just as the lyrics were halfway through, Roland's ear was grabbed by a hand. "Are you crazy, boy? How dare you be so disrespectful in front of the lady? Apologize now or I'll tear your mouth apart." The scoundrel reluctantly apologized. Ruby awkwardly pleaded for him. After all, she didn't want to hear such an insincere apology. The blonde's hand loosened. Roland immediately scurried away faster than a rat. "That stinking brat," he quickly apologized to Ruby. "That kid's not right in the head. I hope Madam won't take it to heart." Ruby waved it off dismissively. It wasn't the first time she had heard such rumors, but she still felt wronged and pitifully shed tears. Because any misstep would lead to dire consequences, and her current marriage partner was known as the neighboring country's golden child, not only the king's most beloved nephew, but also a renowned knight of the north, and he was extremely handsome. "I'm sorry, I'm just worried my husband might believe these rumors." Flustered, he reassured her that guy won't care about these rumors. "Besides, from what we've seen earlier, he doesn't dislike you. It's your first time encountering this situation." He continued to encourage Ruby, "Just feel free to like him. I should say, being liked by you is that guy's supreme honor." Although these words weren't much of a comfort, if this guy was really, as he described, then she had more hope of winning her husband's heart. Continuing to stroll in the park, Ruby was still depressed. Why did Yuli's brother have such animosity towards her? Was it because of Yuli? Before she could think further, a small head peeked out from behind a statue. It was Princess Alien, the queen's daughter. The soft and cute little girl was particularly timid. Just because her mother was born a slave in the East, although the king loved her dearly, the princess with obvious foreign features couldn't obtain the same status as other princesses. In the upper-class society obsessed with bloodlines, she could only ever be an outsider. This made Ruby, who was in a similar situation, involuntarily sympathize with her. At this moment, the little girl was still very guarded towards her. Ruby had to walk away at a distance. However, the little girl told her that if she wanted to realize love, they must stand there together. The family seemed harmonious, but in reality they were all perverted. But this very handsome man was famously celibate, completely unmoved by female charms. It turned out that Ruby was now standing at the lotus pond in the palace. Rumor had it that love-realizing fairies lived there. How cute, just like a child, the two, one big and one small, grew closer this way. If you let me touch your hair, I'll give these flowers to you, madam. The originally harmonious atmosphere was shattered by Iskai's voice. Her Royal Highness is looking for you everywhere. With a cold poker face, not only was Ruby startled, Alien was even more frightened, trembling behind her. In a flash, she stuffed the flowers in her hand into Ruby's and ran away without looking back. This guy sighed, "You're both equally disobedient." Ruby thought he came to find a princess, but the man stared straight at her. "I was looking for you." Then the man strode towards her. Ruby panicked. Could he be here to settle the score from earlier, stealing herself and closing her eyes? "As long as you spare my life, I'll do whatever you want." However, the man asked her, "What are you doing? Was the Romana princess raised to be beaten, or are you expecting me to kiss you?" Ruby stammered, "Haha, if I said I was expecting it, I'd probably be beaten to death, right?" She could only tell the truth now because you seemed angry earlier, so you thought I would hit you, and you still say you like me. The only women who could approach him were his own sister and a childhood friend. The reason he agreed to this marriage was to prevent his sister from marrying her second brother, and the original Ruby indeed lived up to her villainous reputation. Seeing the man's face turn gloomy again, Ruby hurriedly explained, "Because you were the first to save me from danger." She couldn't continue. Fortunately, this guy's colleague called him away. Ruby had just breathed a sigh of relief, when unexpectedly the man turned back and instructed, "Wait for me here for a moment." This was unprecedented, but he still had something to say to her. She sat on the bridge, admiring the flowers in her hand, chrysanthemums which shared her name. The flower's meaning was eternal happiness. How ironic, as she was self-mocking, a sudden force surged from the water, pulling her deep into the lake. In a moment of falling, she thought she was going to die. Logically, she should have been afraid, but surprisingly, she felt no fear at all. This ending seemed fine too, however her survival instinct urged her to keep struggling. Just as Ruby was about to suffocate, a large hand reached out to her. A few years after the marriage, she poisoned this guy's sister to death, and she and her family eventually died at his guy's hands. Her husband pulled her out in one swift motion. The surrounding crowd buzzed with discussion. How could this happen in the palace? Ruby was dazed. The thing that made her fall into the pond was clearly a monster, but seeing Iskai's cold gaze, she wasn't confident she could convince him to believe her. After all, last time he thought she was deliberately seeking attention. If she was to die, so be it. She directly collapsed into her husband's arms. "I'm so scared. Thank you for saving me again." This time she took the initiative, not giving her husband a chance to react. Indeed, the man didn't lose his temper this time. He even sent her back to the mansion, soaking in a bathtub. Ruby couldn't help but fall in a deep thought. Logically, this was the city center. Monsters shouldn't appear, but since her arrival, there had been 2 consecutive attacks. If this continued, would she be treated as a witch and disposed of? As they say, misfortunes never come singly. Unexpectedly, this fall into the water triggered her old condition. Not only did her stomach burn, but her whole body ached as if pricked by needles. Since reincarnating into this body, this mysterious symptom would occur twice a year. Ruby sat by the window, pondering what to do. If she didn't poison her husband's sister and maintained a good relationship with this guy, would there be a different outcome? At first, her father would find doctors for her, but when all the doctors couldn't find any problems, her father decided she was faking illness to avoid marriage. That man-eating gaze at the time still frightened Ruby whenever she recalled it. Since then, she chose to endure it. After all, the symptoms would disappear after a few days, so this time too, she chose not to call a doctor. She couldn't let her husband think she was playing tricks again, but that day her husband told her to wait for him. What exactly did he want to say? She had to seize this rare opportunity. Sneaking to the training ground, she found the knights drinking. Her sneaking behavior might be seen as stalking. Seeing her husband's arrogant demeanor, she wondered how she could get close to him. "Were you talking about?" A man's voice came from above, nearly scaring her to death. But this person looked familiar. Wasn't he the assistant who came to find Iskai at the lotus pond? At this moment, her brother entered. The little assistant apologized repeatedly. He saw the lady seemed to be hiding from something, so he curiously followed and hid too, seeing the man had no ill intentions towards her. Ruby also let down her guard. He was really like a gentle puppy. The two crouched down and chatted casually. They even mentioned the former assistant who seemed to have sung an inappropriate song to Iskai and was dismissed. Ruby almost thought he was Roland's accomplice, but why are you hiding, madam? Well, I came to see him, Ruby said hesitantly. The little assistant understood immediately. Iskai is indeed the type who's better admired from afar. This description almost made Ruby burst out laughing. But Suri's guy was already very gentle to his wife, wasn't he? The word gentle could be used to describe him. Perhaps he had lost his mind after being beaten last time. The two were chatting excitedly when his guy suddenly appeared behind them. Next time you might as well lie flat on the ground. The two startled fools against their conscience praised his guy's words as very reasonable. His concerned appearance would fool anyone into thinking he was a good person. If you're not satisfied with this marriage, you can tell me. Just then the blonde guy also came over, hearing the commotion. The little assistant quickly found an excuse to escape. While the blonde guy was there, Ruby thanked her husband again for saving her last night. However, the man coldly stated that he saved her only because he should, seeing Ruby lower her head in disappointment. The blonde guy quickly invited her to join them for lunch. She thought this was a chance to get closer to this guy. Unexpectedly, she suddenly had a nosebleed in public. In front of her husband, she suddenly started bleeding from her nose. This embarrassing scene almost made her faint. While Ruby was still worrying about the propriety of the situation, that husband who usually disliked her steadily caught her. Why are you so hot? Ruby couldn't believe it, the symptoms that even doctors couldn't detect. How did her husband know? Ruby rolled her eyes. Could she really say anything if she said that she'd probably get beaten up, but she had to keep up appearances? Hearing that she went out alone in this condition, this guy got angry. What did you call a doctor? Ruby chuckled. This isn't worth troubling others over. Rather than calling a doctor and being questioned again, she'd rather continue to endure it. She had thought this condition was a side effect of entering someone else's body. No one but herself could sense it, but now his guys said she was burning hot. He even wiped her nosebleed himself. She suddenly found it amazing, but now she really couldn't hold on anymore. With a thud, she fell directly into the man's arms. In her haze, she seemed to hear a woman crying. Was it Erin or some maid? She woke up to the sound of crying, wanting to go out and investigate. She unexpectedly opened the door to find her husband and the doctor standing outside. This guy was one thing, but why did the doctor also have a disgusted expression? Are you feeling better, madam? Ruby quickly replied, much better. I just heard someone crying, so I came out to check. The two men exchanged glances, both seeing exasperation in each other's eyes. It's not that I'm dissatisfied, I just feel I'll be too far from brother. No one was crying. Her husband's answer confused Ruby. She really wasn't lying. She clearly heard it just now. However, her husband was very patient. I didn't say you were lying. Ruby didn't expect her husband to believe her so easily. After the doctor left, Ruby started feeling dizzy again. This guy glanced at her, then wrapped one arm around her and directly hoisted her onto his shoulder like a package. What sudden whim was this? In her panic and confusion, she didn't forget her persona, truly my Prince Charming. Looks like the fever is quite serious. At this moment, Ruby realized she had been unconscious for 3 days and nights. She apologized for causing trouble while expressing concern, saying she went out thinking the crying was Erin's. Erin doesn't cry. Indeed, Erin seemed stronger than her, but she'd think she was good at too. Surprisingly, the man asked what she was good at, but as soon as he spoke, he felt it unnecessary to know. However, Ruby's obedient demeanor made him pause for half a second. The words were on the tip of his tongue, but he turned and left. Ruby was about to explode behind him. He always only said half of what he meant. Seeing the man leave without looking back, Ruby's face was full of exasperation. I want to live with brother forever. How would he know? After leaving, the husband was banging his head against the wall. Perhaps Iskai himself didn't understand what this conflicting psychology was all about. Since the drowning incident, Ruby had been confined to her room to recuperate. Even at mealtimes, Erin would come to supervise her eating. For Ruby, who suffered from anorexia, this was quite a torment. However, Erin was constantly blaming herself for not taking good care of her, and she had never seen her brother so worried before. Ruby also found this incredible. She had thought that even if she died in front of him, he wouldn't react. Seeing that Ruby was almost recovered, Erin invited her to participate in the weekend's horseback riding activity. Ruby agreed without a second thought. This was a great opportunity to expand her social circle. She had to make a good impression. After having the maid dress her up to look pure and harmless, she also asked the maid to pick out some jewelry for her. In this house, she had no one she could trust completely. These small favors were just a probe into the situation in the mansion. It turned out the head maid was the siblings' wet nurse with a relationship closer than their birth mother. No wonder she was so dissatisfied with her attitude. But in the original story, there were no scenes of the head maid bullying the original owner. Could it be that she only picked on the weak? She had experienced misfortune in the stable in both lives, thus having a deep shadow over this place. But to deepen her impression of being naive and innocent. Her brother stroked her head contentedly. He was very pleased with this answer. Ruby endured her fear to participate in the horseback riding activity. This activity was actually an excuse for horseback riding, gathering young nobles together for a matchmaking event. Of course, her love rival Euleria was present. After the woman insincerely inquired about Ruby's health, she hugged this guy's horse, seemingly happy for Ruby, but actually wanted to show off how close she and this guy's horse were. And she indeed achieved her goal. At this moment, Ruby was thinking, no wonder everyone thought she had stolen Yule's position. The sister-in-law noticed her embarrassment, put her hand on her sister-in-law's shoulder, telling her to choose a horse she liked, and informed her that the horses on the left were very gentle. But no matter which one she looked at, Ruby thought all the horses looked fierce. She already had a shadow over horses, and his guy appeared with a sour face. Hearing that his wife was also going horseback riding, he had an angry expression. Ruby couldn't understand his mood, but a smiling face disarms, so she lavishly praised his handsome appearance. The man turned his head indifferently. Ruby then asked where he was going. Nowhere, I don't do anything on rest days. She had to sit on her eldest brother's lap during meals. He would kiss and pat her head in front of the family. Ruby suppressed her nausea and forced out 2 tears. Her brother looked at her gently. Ruby thought, then why did you come here with such a sour face? But out loud, she asked if he wanted to join. Unexpectedly, the man arrogantly tossed his head, saying he was very busy. He just said he was free, you fickle guy, hearing that his wife didn't even know how to ride. This guy looked at his sister Erin. She immediately knew what her brother was thinking. The doctor said horseback riding is fine. After saying this, she pulled Yulia away, leaving her brother alone. Ruby watched helplessly as Erin dragged away the reluctant Yulia. No, Erin, how could you leave me with this monster? She hurriedly made an excuse to sneak back home. Unexpectedly, Iskai called out to her and sent away the stable boy beside him. Watching the stable boys hurried back, fear swept through Ruby's body. This way, only she and Iskai were left. Although this was a good opportunity to cultivate feelings with her husband, this was the stable. It only reminded her of those painful memories. It was like this in her first life and the same in her second life. Just think of it as a trip. Verbal and physical abuse. Iskai's serious, emotionless voice made her shiver. Her husband just asked her to get an apple. Yet she felt her knees begging for mercy, uncontrollably mumbling I'm sorry from her mouth. It's all my fault, I'm ungrateful, I'm beyond saving. Ruby's unusual behavior left her husband stunned. He frowned, not understanding his wife's reaction. After a long while, he finally spoke where the horses in Romana often beat. Then he picked up the riding crop, angrily throwing it aside. Why did you bring this? Seeing her husband angry, Ruby became even more fearful. Because it's the only thing here. Tell me where the other things are. I'll go get them. This guy was furious. What do you need other things for? Ruby was so shocked she broke out in a cold sweat. I'm sorry, I know I was wrong. What exactly did you do wrong? Everything is wrong. I've been wrong from the start. Shut up, Iskai was so angry you swore. He simply couldn't communicate with her. Seeing Ruby so scared, she was hiccuping. You only need to endure for half a year. That guy won't touch you anyway. He pulled her up from the ground, telling her to catch her breaths. Ruby finally regained her senses. What was wrong with her? Wasn't she supposed to be skilled at acting by now? Then Iskai picked up an apple. This is what I asked you to get. Weren't you going to choose a horse? My horse just needs food, so it was just to feed the horse. It was all because he didn't explain clearly at first. Making her scared for nothing. While feeding the horse, Ruby muttered, Horse, you must be good to me. This guy stared at his wife's profile, feeling both confused and heartbroken. Suddenly an idea came to him. He called for Mars, saying there was no need to prepare a horse. He would ride with his wife, surprised but also happy. Ruby asked, can we really do that? But didn't you just say you were busy? I mean, I was mentally busy. All right, you wins. The sight of the two riding one horse surprised everyone present. They all exclaimed it was impossible. Who didn't know this guy was the well-known celibate prince? I'll come to see you often, Ruby finally smiled. You'll really come to see me often. Hearing the surrounding discussions, Ruby felt the murderous intent from behind. She was truly scared. Even his own sister thought her brother was acting a bit strange. However, as soon as the man dismounted, he immediately went to confront his sister. You always create messes for me to clean up. The siblings argued fiercely over Ruby. Ruby felt uneasy. At this moment, Yuli, who had been watching from the side, suddenly stood up. She separated the siblings. Instead of wasting time arguing, why don't you take this chance to show your wife around? Only then did Iskai remember his wife was still on the horse. At this time, Ruby was at a loss about how to dismount. Iskai gently pulled her hand and she fell directly into his arms. At this moment, it would be a lie to say she wasn't moved. Don't argue anymore, don't get angry because of me, it makes you look less handsome. Their intimate appearance was seen by Yuli standing nearby. Her eyes were full of darkness. Behind her smile, she was frantically praying inside. Please don't come at all. She was already struggling enough just trying to figure out how to survive. This guy covered his head. I'm not angry. Ruby then turned to Aaron. Aaron also said she wasn't angry. Then what was it that she saw earlier? But this was good too. Ruby once again expressed her gratitude to her husband. I won't forget what happened today. Can I write in my diary? The man replied irritably, do as you please. Acting is so tiring. Just my luck, it was just an afternoon tea, but the teacup handle was in a shape he despised. You should know this turtle design was his brother's favorite. Every time he saw it, he felt sick. He silently encouraged himself, I can do this. I can do this. Just as he was about to breathe a sigh of relief, someone else came to mock him under the guise of greeting. You don't know how worried I was when I heard you fainted. I heard you even had a nosebleed. Ruby laughed awkwardly. Yes, thank you for your concern. I noticed last time that Madam didn't eat much. Are you too focused on maintaining your figure, or does the food here not suit your taste? Ruby laughed it off, thinking, haven't we only met twice? Soon her wedding day arrived, white wedding dress, beautiful face. Ruby pretended to be extremely reluctant to leave. But she said aloud that she was just picky with food. The woman persisted, you must take care of your health in the north. After all, we can't trouble others unnecessarily. Her intention was probably to mock Ruby for only causing trouble, but Ruby took it at face value. She even expressed gratitude, asking if they could be friends since she was so thoughtful. Of course we can, it was like punching a pillow. At this time, Aaron, who had been silent, pushed a piece of cake towards her. Judging by the atmosphere, she seemed to still be angry about what happened earlier. Yuli advised her not to be upset, wondering why the siblings who got along so well suddenly started arguing. The ones who get along well are you and your brother, right? Yuli pondered. Her own brother could be quite troublesome at times. Compared to a younger brother, she'd prefer an older one. Then she asked Ruby if she got along well with her brothers. Ruby casually replied that they did. Wasn't this a test? She said she liked to hear so much that she had no time to think about her brothers. Unexpectedly, at the mention of her brothers, the women having tea blushed. They asked Ruby when her brothers would visit. Ruby had almost forgotten about her perverted brother. Her brother was indeed very popular. Just thinking about her brother coming to the north, she'd have to please two arrogant individuals at the same time. She squeezed out tears to say goodbye to her father. Silly child, we're not separating forever. It made her feel dizzy. Besides his sister, the man only had one woman around him. Everyone thought Yuli would be Iskai's ultimate partner. However, the man got married and showed a different reaction to his newlywed wife. The image of them riding one horse together deeply hurt Yuli's eyes. So when Ruby was being ostracized by others, she invited Ruby to go horseback riding. She even comforted her, saying the others weren't bad people. They were just jealous because they had pursued Iskai before and been rejected. Ruby waved her hand, saying she understood. After all, her husband was so handsome, it was normal to attract attention. Madam, you're truly broad-minded. I thought the Princess of Romana would be a petty person. Indeed, if it were little Tabia from the original story, she would have caused a scene. But being in this situation, Ruby understood her more. I'd like your brother to accompany you, but circumstances don't allow it. Behind Ruby's regretful expression, she was incredibly relieved. Anyone in her position would probably act the same way. While Ruby was pondering, their horses had already entered the forest. Yuli suddenly proposed a race with Ruby. If you go straight in that direction, you'll reach the foot of a mountain. Whoever arrives first wins. Ruby thought this was a good opportunity to get rid of Yuli. She enthusiastically accepted. Yuli was very generous, letting her start first. After all, she was too familiar with the route here, so she had to give Ruby an advantage. Ruby, without any suspicion, rode her horse freely. It had been a long time since she felt so relaxed. This life where she didn't have to watch others' expressions was truly wonderful. For once, she wanted to show her true abilities and have a real competition. She turned back, calling Yule's name, but found no one behind her. As she was puzzled, suddenly several dark shadows attacked her. They entangled her hands and feet. It felt like they were about to swallow her whole. In an instant, Ruby was dragged off her horse. Knowing the rumors about her relationship with her brother, letting him come would only cause more chaos. She lost all consciousness. When Ruby woke up, it was already pitch dark. She found herself lying in the middle of a grass patch. Before she could make out her surroundings, there was a rustling sound from the bushes behind her. She looked back. A green-eyed, plump, long-eared monster appeared before her eyes, a raccoon or a rabbit. She was so frightened she couldn't think straight. The unidentified creature opened its huge mouth, which was filled to the brim with white bones. Ruby covered her mouth. She wanted to escape, but her feet wouldn't move. Finally, she couldn't help but scream. Unexpectedly, the monster flapped its hands and walked towards her step by step. Muttering bubble bubble, Ruby was about to die of fright. Don't blame me. She had tried so hard not to die at her husband's hands, only to be eaten by a monster. However, the monster suddenly hugged her and started running. It only stopped when it found a large rock. It covered Ruby's mouth just as she was about to scream. Strange howling sounds came from the darkness. In the moonlight, Ruby tried to peek out to see what was happening, but Bubble pushed her down. After acting out a scene of filial piety with her father, she turned to face her second brother, who was still opposing until now. Fear instantly swept over her entire body. The scene before her eyes once again made Ruby hide. In the moonlight, a headless horseman holding his own head was riding towards them. The rider and horse emitted an eerie black aura. It seemed to be guided by sound. Ruby was too scared to breathe compared to the raccoon beside her. The aura emitted by this monster was truly terrifying. After a long while, the monster finally turned and left. Ruby finally breathed a sigh of relief. She turned to see the raccoon rummaging through something. That familiar dark shadow attacked again. She then felt the wound on her head throbbed with pain. With a pat sound, the raccoon slapped a leaf onto her head. Ruby then realized the raccoon was trying to save her, and it could understand her words. Can you understand human speech? Bubbles shook its head vigorously. It seemed it could only understand her speech. Her father, who seemed to care for her, was using her as a tool to consolidate power. Although he was proud and impulsive, he was the only one in this family who had never heard her. Can you help me one more time? I want to go home, but I can't find a way out. Hearing this, Bubble looked dejected, but it still gestured for Ruby to climb on its back. It would carry her out. Ruby grabbed its big ears. The texture is so soft and comfortable. After she was settled, Bubble made a leap and quickly ran towards the edge of the forest. Meanwhile, the holy knights were searching everywhere for Ruby. Seeing she was safe, everyone finally relaxed. They called out to his sky. We've found the madam. However, when her husband saw her covered in injuries, he darkened his face. It seemed that the madam couldn't go a day without causing trouble. His wife had disappeared, and he had anxiously led people to search the entire mountain. But seeing his wife's miserable state, he couldn't help but scold her. I've told you don't use this method to attract my attention. Ruby was too scared to raise her head. She would truly miss him after saying goodbye to her second brother. Even her apology was trembling, but I had no choice. Hearing this, as Sky frowned, he scooped her up in a princess carry. Forget it, let's treat her first. We'll talk about the rest later. On the way back to the city, Ruby glanced at the man's profile from the corner of her eye. Although she didn't know what he was thinking, his embrace was warm and reassuring. After a frightening day, she slowly closed her eyes. When Ruby woke up again, she was back in her own bed. Her husband stood by her bedside. Tell me what exactly happened. Ruby was a bit surprised. This time, he actually wanted to hear her explanation. So she told him everything about her race with Yuli and how she later lost consciousness after being entangled by dark shadows. However, she ultimately concealed the matter about Bubble, but after hearing her explanation, Iskai's expression worsened. Yuli said you insisted on running deep into the forest. She told you it was dangerous, but you wouldn't listen to her advice. Ruby widened her eyes in disbelief. She didn't understand why Yuli would lie. Was she afraid of taking responsibility, or did she intend to kill her all along, but she had been so friendly at the time? Her eldest brother's hand caressed her face. It's only half a year. How did she suddenly change? Before she could explain, the man's cold voice came from above. Go back, no conditions. I'm letting you go. Ruby's heart sank, although she knew their marriage was doomed to end badly. It couldn't be now. Her psychotic brother was already looking for an opportunity to cancel the engagement. If she really left like this, who would stop Aaron's death? Moreover, even for her own sake, she couldn't go back. Ruby's no interrupted the man's rambling. Then with a thud, she nailed on the ground. Please, I can't go back. It's all my fault. I promise I won't do it again. Please don't send me away. I'll accept any punishment. This scene was identical to what happened in the stable before. In this guy's mind, images of Yule and her apologizing kept alternating. He wavered, grinning his teeth. He suddenly grabbed Ruby's shoulders. I really hate you. You're driving me crazy. You might as well put on the arrogant princess act. The man's furious roar was actually hiding his inner panic. She said brother must come to see me, but in her heart, she was determined never to return here. Why did he care about her life or deaths? Being tormented by these emotions every day, he felt like he was going mad. At this moment, Ruby understood. Between her and his childhood sweetheart's words, this guy seemed to believe or more. This was enough. At least she still meant something in his heart. The man she loved was lured away by a notorious evil woman. To get rid of her, she led her to a forest where monsters gathered. However, that woman luckily survived. But so what? As long as she said it was her who insisted on going there, others would certainly believe her. But she still had to pretend to be harmonious on the surface. So the next day, Yuli came to apologize to Ruby. She said she didn't dare tell the truth because this guy was too scary at the time, but Ruby couldn't believe this explanation. If she truly felt sorry, she should have told everyone the truth, not just when they were alone. She knew that in others' eyes, Ruby was just a willful and overbearing evil woman, yet she still chose to damage her reputation. It was clear that luring her into the forest was intentional. While Ruby was getting married, this guy, on the other hand, showed no awareness of being a groom. But why? In the original story, although Yule's character wasn't described in detail, she wasn't a villain. She was calm in the face of problems, beautiful and elegant, a perfect noble lady, and she always managed to handle conflicts with the original Ruby skillfully. That's why she trusted her without any reservations at that time. Could it be that because of her transmigration, this guy's attitude had changed? Someone who was originally insignificant gradually became an eyesore. That's why she wanted to get rid of her. She thought everything would be fine if she didn't follow the original story. She had been too naive. Therefore, Ruby didn't expose her. She smiled and said it was nothing, that she rarely got to see the beautiful scenery here and even thanked them. She clearly knew she wasn't qualified to be her opponent. Even if she argued with her, no one would take her side. From that day on, Ruby resumed her convalescence just like before. Aaron supervised her 3 meals a day, but she was busy with her brother's birthday party recently. So the task of taking care of Ruby fell to the head maid, thinking about the maid's two-faced attitude towards her. Ruby felt annoyed. What's more frustrating was that she didn't know what gift to give her husband. After much thought, she decided to embroider a handkerchief for him. The head maid suddenly appeared by her bedside. I didn't know you could embroider. Is it a gift for the young master? Not only did he not go to receive the bride, but even when his subordinates described how beautiful the bride was, he maintained a cold poker face. Hearing that Ruby was troubled about what pattern to embroider, the head maid kindly suggested she could embroider a willow tree. She said that when the young master was little, he often climbed willow trees to play, but now the tree is gone and he always regrets it. Ruby happily accepted her suggestion. As soon as the head maid left, Ruby muttered, "Regret my foot." Although she couldn't remember the specific details, there was a clear image. Iskai's mother had hanged herself on a willow tree. The head was clearly trying to lead her to her death indirectly. It seems the person who extinguished the holy fire in her room that day was her. Soon, on the day of the party, Ruby embroidered a sunflower. She also wrote a letter of self-criticism, intending to hand it to her husband personally. But her old problem flared up at this moment. She rang for a maid to ask for some painkillers. Unexpectedly, the head maid came. She brought bad news. The young master said Madam didn't need to attend the party. Since Madam was unwell, it was a good opportunity to rest properly. If you have anything you need to pass on, I can do it for you. The wife stayed awake for 3 days and nights, embroidering a handkerchief as a gift for her husband, only to be told on the day of the birthday party that there was no need for her to attend. We don't expect you to go receive her, but at least come home for a meal. Ruby didn't quite believe the head maid's words, but she dared not risk it. After all, her husband had said before that she should return to her own country. She couldn't possibly give the handkerchief to the head maid. After much consideration, Ruby decided to give the gift to her husband and leave. After taking painkillers, Ruby gave the maid she had bribed before. "A gem, I'm just going out for some fresh air. Please help me." Changing in a formal attire, Ruby successfully escaped. Who would have thought that the lady of the Duke's mansion would have to hide and sneak around just to give her husband a birthday gift? However, the heavens seemed to deliberately make things difficult for her. Suddenly, it started pouring rain. Not only was she soaked to the bone, but even the gift in her hand got wet, rushing to the banquet hall in the brightly lit hall. There were bursts of laughter just a wall apart. It seemed like a different world from hers. Ruby held the gift she had prepared with such effort, pondering how to give it to this guy. When her husband's voice came from inside, it doesn't seem that difficult to prepare. This guy was commenting on Yule's gift. Though his words were a bit heartless, everyone spoke in a familiar tone. In contrast to herself, she was just a stranger and outsider. Ruby quietly closed the door. Try to think from her perspective, like a hostage in an unfamiliar place, how lonely and scared she must be. She should just go back. She was unwelcome here to begin with, and now the gift was ruined compared to the gifts from others. How could she present such a thing? The chill in her heart made her sneeze involuntarily. The rain stopped, but she couldn't find her way back. While looking around, she accidentally bumped into someone again. It hurt, she didn't care who it was. Ruby just wanted to be alone now. She was about to pretend not to notice and slip away, but the other person called out to her. "Madam, are you feeling unwell?" Hearing that voice, Ruby knew who it was. "Just scold me directly," she was self-aware, rather than hearing others mock her while she smiled, pretending not to care. She'd rather give up entirely. Her words caught Roland completely off guard. While the man was stunned, Ruby tearfully complained, could it be because of her period? She cried pathetically, but as she turned around, the sight before her startled her. 3 men were looking at her strangely. His beloved sister was married, but the groom wasn't him. Ruby's face turned bright red. What if her husband got angry because she came out without permission? At least she didn't want to lose face in front of her rival's brother. So she turned to flee unexpectedly. She stepped on her own skirt and fell flat on her face. It was so embarrassing. This guy came forward and embraced her. "What should I say to you?" Ruby hurriedly apologized, saying she shouldn't have left the room without permission. She just wanted to give him the gift and return immediately. Iskai looked confused. "What are you talking about? I know you said I didn't need to attend the party, but I still wanted to give you the gift." "What are you saying? Who exactly said that?" After a moment of silence, Ruby realized she had been tricked by the head maid. Her husband didn't say he didn't want to see her. She instantly cheered up. "Can I give you the gift then?" She was relieved. At least it wasn't too late. However, Iskai now looked full of concern. Words came to his lips, but he remained silent. Suddenly, an angry roar came from behind. "You brat, are you causing trouble again? I've warned you, if you dare sing that song one more time, you're dead." Ruby covered her mouth and giggled secretly. Although it wasn't planned, seeing Roland flustered made her feel much better. You might think he loved her, but it was just his perverted possessiveness at work. Unexpectedly, Iskai turned and asked brother what song. Instantly, everyone froze in place. Especially Ruby, she didn't want the man to hear that song. Extremely nervous, she sneezed. Iskai's attention immediately shifted to her. "Are you all right?" he said as he carried Ruby into the banquet hall. Wait, she looked so disheveled going in. His wife had been bullied. The man felt heartache, but this concern seemed to disappear quickly. The next moment, he coldly led his wife into the banquet hall, instructing his sister to help her change clothes. Then he hurriedly walked away. Ruby began to overthink. Could it be that this guy wanted to announce their divorce at the birthday party? As she was wallowing in self-pity, little Princess Arian found her. The blonde Night Sister came along too. The little girl's innocence and romance made Ruby temporarily forget her worries. So when this guy came looking for her, what he saw was his wife smiling radiantly. Only the second brother seemed somewhat normal. His sister had been divorced for less than 3 months. They should consider her feelings. He looked decent on the outside, but he had severe split personality. Playing with the 2 little girls, the man suddenly reached out his hand to his wife.